Hi everybody, I'm Mark Chaffordini with GoSeeTalk. I'm here today with Dickey to talk about Blaze, the true story of Blaze Foley, written and directed by Hawke and Sybil Rosen. Thank you so much for joining us, and I gotta say this was a fantastic movie.
Thank you so very much.
Like a lot of people, I assume that not really very knowledgeable about Blaze's life, but watching you play someone I've never heard of before, you were magnetic.
Thanks, brother.
And I guess if you're a musician, you're used to performing. So how was that being in front of a camera, acting, versus just being on stage and being a musician?
Well, I didn't know what to expect, and I was rightly nervous about it. And going, leading up to doing the movie, I had a lot of time to spend with Blaze's songs, which felt more natural to me, So that got me close to him. I spent a couple of hours with Vincent D'Onofrio, who's a friend of Ethan's and has become a friend of mine, and he kind of gave me a couple of pillars, principles to lean on. Because to be honest, it sounds naive, but I didn't really know what acting was, and I wanted to understand a little bit more about what it was. So when we started, I was nervous as could be, but once we started, and every day was a mission, every scene was a mission, it was really musical. It felt musical to me. The language was musical. You talked about beats, you talked about rest, you talked about rhythms, and volume, and all these different things. So it felt musical, and all the tools that I use to write music and perform music felt applicable. Performing music in a way is acting and putting yourself into these moments. So I had done that a lot, and Ethan was always very encouraging and saying, like, look, you're already kind of doing it. And I didn't agree at the time. And after having done it, it really does feel like that. So leading up to it, it felt like I was jumping off the side of a gigantic diving board with maybe no water. And once it got started, it felt natural. I was nervous every day, regardless of the way it was. But all the music experiences in my life somehow prepared me to do it.
Well, I played guitar a long time ago, and the way I was taught is just start covering people that you like and people you enjoy. How did you first start playing?
The first guitar I ever got, my grandfather gave to me, and right before I turned 10, and he had a 1935 Depression-era Gibson L30, black with white trim, and I was absolutely in love with it. And he used to let me play it when I would go visit him, and he got ill. He passed away in '88, and he very ceremoniously he wanted me to have this guitar, and I was very fond of him, and he taught me a lot about being alive. So I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. I sort of beat around with it a little bit, and then when I turned 13, Jimi Hendrix. When I discovered Jimi Hendrix, I became wildly obsessed. I missed a lot of weekend parties in junior high school and high school because I wanted to learn how to play Manic Depression, and I wanted to learn how to play Voodoo Child. And through Jimmy, I went into all the blues artists that influenced him, and then I discovered Zeppelin, and I discovered the Beatles I had already known about. I didn't recognize how good of a guitar player George Harrison was until later, but I got just obsessed, absolutely obsessed. And music and guitar was a little bit of a life raft for me. It certainly was some sort of security blanket when I was young, but it kind of grew into a lifeboat, a riverboat, and now it's like an island. It's like my home. So it's how I relate to the world and how I understand what I'm doing here, and I feel really strange without a guitar when I travel. And so you see, I have my guitar over there everywhere I go. And I've been away from home for a long time now. Going on 10 weeks, and I miss all my gear, I miss my amplifiers, I miss my guitar. So it's what I love to do.
Is that the guitar with the bite marks in it?
I bite all my guitars.
Okay.
Yeah. I've had friends on tour lose instruments. The whole van with all the gear, and I've often wondered what I would do in that moment if somebody of an authority was like, "Hey, that's my guitar. That fella's got my guitar," and he's like, "Well, how can you prove it?" And I was like, "If you flip over the neck near the headstock, you'll see my bite marks on it." A Stratocaster, you can do it better on the horns because it sticks out. But I love my gear. I don't want to lose my gear. Knock on wood. But that's one of the things I do.
Well, taking on a role like Blaze Foley, how much prep work went into that? And when you talk to dealing with Sybil on a day-to-day basis, how did you really get into that character?
Well, it started with the songs and the little bit of YouTube videos and stuff that are out there of him talking. But I really spent a ton of time with his songs, and the way that I learned his songs is I had a live microphone with a headset, and I would play his songs and play along with him and sing harmony with him. play with him and do the parts that Gerth Morlix used to do, who was one of his run buddies and musical partner. And in my imagination, I was playing shows with him, and I was learning his songs. And then I flipped that, and I started to record myself singing Blaze's parts, and I would go back in and put the harmony that I had learned the other way. So just in a musical way, I was doing that. The guts of all those songs that I was learning, some of them are funny and sweet, and some of them are heavy. So I really marinated in just the songs. And when Sybil and I were introduced through email, it really was the part of the preparation process, even bigger than learning the script, was learning stories from her and sweet little tales. And also, I was alone when we were getting ready to shoot the film. I was part of the location team, So when all that was kind of done and the crew was like building the pieces, I was just alone in a tiny little dingy kind of like hotel-esque room on this movie set with the songs. And every day, Sybil and I would write each other 3 or 4 times, and they were like these little magic presents that would arrive. And I was recording on my iPhone, just on the little memo thing. I would record one of Blaze's songs every day to send to her, and then she would tell me a story about that song. Or she would tell me when she was there when he wrote that song. And so we've been writing each other. When she finally came to set, I was like nervous to meet her. Like I was like, like meeting like my best friend from another life or something. But we immediately were just very fond of each other and loved each other. And I was nervous to occupy the space that somebody I admired occupied. And I knew that people that he knew were going to see the movie, hopefully, and were going to be curious about what we were up to. And that was like the biggest obstacle in me looking forward to doing it. My relationship with Sybil that grew out of getting ready to do it eradicated all that. It gave me permission to leave all that behind. She gave me permission just to take a deep breath and be myself, but be this kind of this new Blaze with the pieces of him that I could get to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it was a long process. I mean, it was a long wind-up, and I over-prepared because I'd never done it before. It helped, though. It was principally the thing that helped me be there, be present.
Sure. Well, in those scenes where there's no guitar in your hand and it's you and just and Sybil's character, how it's tough because we can't ask him his side of it, so
Right.
you have to lean on Sybil. But I think my favorite part of the movie is the part where you're talking about confidence is the condolence prize for being alive.
Right.
So when you have to get on that emotional level and you can't hide behind a guitar, how easy is that to get in those? A lot of the scenes are done in one take, and where did the material come from?
That material came in the moment. By the time that we started, the Treehouse stuff was at the end of shooting, and Allie and I had grown very fond of one another and close and trusted each other. And being in that treehouse, it was rightly cold somehow. Louisiana doesn't get that cold, but it was really cold. And we were all bonded as a team, the crew and Ethan and all of us. And so when we were in the treehouse, he encouraged a little bit more improvisation. There was a little bit of it through the movie where I would throw lines out and do these things, but that time, he just wanted to see the energy when it was late shoots and the warmth of that light and the two of us being like 2 squirrels in our little squirrel house, He just liked some of the stuff he let us kind of go. And then that scene of us playing cards, Allie and I had a similar conversation about acting, and it was similar to that. And I think both of us intuited that we could use this like pieces of this real thing that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And what Blaze is talking about there is something that I actually do believe. A lot of people don't know that they're just in the drama of their life, but there's incredible things happening inside your body. There's incredible things happening without you, within you, and if you've ever gone to the Grand Canyon, it's an unbelievable thing. If you've ever seen the ocean for the first time, it's an unbelievable thing. Falling in love, understanding how wide-ranging the universe is. I used to tell myself all the time when I was a kid. I think everybody had a moment in their life where they were like, oh wow, I wasn't here before, and now I'm here. And what is this? What am I? Oh God! And you take a deep breath, And I always mark that moment. If you can really let that moment be terrifying, and you can really ponder the massive expanses that the universe is, I believe it's a reflection of the capacity that each human being comes into the world with.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of riffing and imagining what it'd be like to smoke a joint with my sweetheart in a treehouse, talking about expressing ourselves. And so we just had freedom to do it, and that's what came out.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
cool. Yeah.
I mean, it's a scene that makes you feel real small, but makes you appreciate the grand scale.
Right,
It's
right.
pretty awesome. And
Yeah.
even better to know it's all improv.
Yeah.
But more to that point, you said you leaned on Vincent D'Onofrio for advice and Ethan Hawke. And, movies are shot out of sequence, as you said. So who else did you look to, and how did you approach this thing as a first-time actor?
When we were shooting the scenes in New York, when I'm on stage with Z and Blaze kind of loses it and gets booed off stage, Josh was like, so he asked me that exact same question. And I don't know why I did this, but it hit me like a bolt. And one of the only actors that I hyper-focused on, who was not really, well, he was an actor, but I studied Jonathan Winters really deep. I don't know why. I think it's because what I know about Jonathan is that he's one of the most incredibly hilarious people, a lot like Robin Williams. This unbelievable talent, but also the depths of his depression and sorrow, and I've read about him and I knew about that really painful things happened to him. Jonathan was in World War II, and when he was away, his mother sold all of his stuff. When he came home, he was like, "Where's my stuff?" And she was like, "Well, I didn't know if you were going to come back or not."
Wow.
That's just a little so. For some reason, he was a big fella and he was a sweetheart, and I really followed Jonathan. I don't know what I was trying to inform myself on, but Jonathan has this crazy control, and he you can put him out in front of 1,000 people and say, talk about stools, sugar, and Panthers, and he will put together something beautiful. And in my mind's eye, Blaze Foley was like that. I don't think you could flummox him unless you displayed injustice. And he didn't like that, So the funny thing about Jonathan Winters' thing that I did was that I told Sybil that, and I said, Sybil, what do you think? I have no idea why I did that. What do you think about that? And she started beaming, and she said, when we went to meet my parents, it was a heavy moment, and it didn't go very well. It went a lot like we show it. And that night, Jonathan Winters was on Carson, and she said, my dad and Blaze bonded over, they're like, yeah, this guy's awesome, that was a wonderful thing. And she told me, Blaze really, really loved him. And he really loved wisecrackers, and he really liked people that sort of bucked the system and made fun of people. And Jonathan Winters was that. So that's another funny little mystery about the project that I could go on and on. But that was something, it was just a little confirmation somehow that I was like, all right, right on. Blaze push me that way. And I told Ethan that later, and he was like, yeah, weird, but cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, Ben, as you approached the role and got into the role, different aspects of people's lives and different mementos mean different things to different people. And the way I took Blaze is it was kind of counterculture, but were there elements of his life that you wondered why he had certain things or get an explanation of things? I mean, one of the questions I had is, why would he have an E.T. band around his hat?
Yeah, he was he was Falstaffian. He was this he loved his mead. He loved his sweet things, but he also loved mystery. That the story with that E.T. band is funny because we were trying to find that. My sweetheart Beth Blofson was the art director for the film, and early on she was collecting little pieces to add little trinkets and things. And we were really trying to find that E.T. and we couldn't figure out what it was. She found an old forum on the internet that his niece had appeared on, and it had been there since '99 or something. But she told a story about how every time Uncle Blaze came to see them, he would steal a toy and replace it with some wacky, crazy hodgepodge thing he had found from the world, finding pieces of who knows what, and culverts and dumpsters. But he'd always replace it. But this one particular time, he had taken her E.T. belt for a kid. And voila, we didn't know what it was. I just thought it was a medallion of sorts, and we didn't know how to search for it. So she searched for an E.T. belt, and there was 3 of them on eBay. And she got one of them, and when we got closer to production, we were like, we should probably get a backup. They were gone. We couldn't find another one.
Oh, man. So
it was really cool, magic little thing. And she had been down the rabbit hole looking for little pieces of information about Blaze. But it is also this interesting thing because E.T. was a huge part of me when I was a kid. E.T. was really moving. I think Elliot and his I was a child of divorce, and Spielberg talks about that movie being about divorce, and I think Blaze was an extraterrestrial. and I think that he lived his life that way, and I think he admired people that also chose to do so, and it was a huge emblem for him. I'm not sure how much gravity he put on it, but when I first came to know him and I saw the pictures of it, it's a very striking thing, you know, because there's like, what's this ET hat, you know? And that hat that he had like shape-shifted into like a wizard's hat, you know, and when he died, that big gray hat that I wear in the movie, he had actually magic markered it, red and blue, and Marcia, his sister, came to set when we were about halfway through shooting, and she brought that hat, and she brought his guitar.
Oh, sweet.
And I put it on, and it fit pretty good. And his guitar, she said, that guitar hadn't been tuned in 16 years. It hadn't been played in 16 years. She took it around to have country people, country stars, country artists, musicians sign it. I don't know how it happened, but I took that guitar out of its case, and it was perfectly in tune for me. And it behaved really well with me. And other people tried to play it, and it sounded like, you know, metal spaghetti on old dirty wood. But again, there's some magic happening, and I full on believe in magic in this universe. I full on believe that music is magic. And so, you know, all that stuff, while it was like, wow, this is amazing, it also was like, heck yeah, that's right. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing here. So it was magical. It really was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
You know, one of the great things about learning about him is that just how passionate he was in small circles, and how much he meant to the people in his life. And I think the way Ethan described this movie was that he didn't want to focus on the death. That's why he kind of get it out of the way early. Yeah. So and Sundance has a lot of cooperation with the filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
So what was their input like? And can you speak to more of just not focusing on the act or the culmination of a death?
The input as regards to like how we presented everything.
Well, just their involvement. Were they hands off, or they?
Well, I don't think they were on board until we were done, and so I mean, the Ethan's vision was really clear, and he wanted time moving in and out of itself, and he wanted the death scene. He didn't want to gut you with this like story, and then bang, you know that he dies in a set. He wanted to have these pieces moving in and out of each other. So the involvement was, I mean, Sundance Selects, is that what you're talking about as far as, yeah?
Correct.
After the film festival is when, they picked us up, and we were so thrilled to be there. We didn't know what was going to happen, and it's all new. I'm a rookie in this league, man. I'm just happy to be here. So when other people wanted to get into it and be part of it and share in it, it was just wildly exciting. Like we were so overjoyed, and Sundance went really well. We had a wonderful experience, and as far as how they're contributing now, there's an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of belief, and the wind is at our back, and we feel just lucky to be standing in the spot where we're standing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a certain Blaze, whether it's a story or a song, do you have something that really spoke to you the most during the production and sticks with you afterwards?
I'll tell you, I grew up with a lot of permission to really give myself freedom to wonder aimlessly about what we're doing here and what this is all about. And I'm unbound from religion or any other principle that might be constructed by humans. That is, I have really supernatural notions of what happens in my life, right? So while we were making the movie, I was working on the song. Well, before we started making the movie, I was working really hard on the songs, and I would kind of talk to him, I would kind of and I never heard anything back until I did. But when it happened, I wasn't reaching out, and I gave myself permission to let these voices in. But I was recording one of his songs and working on it, and he said, I heard a voice clear as day say, let me hear Get Down and Pray. Get Down and Pray is a song I wrote when I was about 23 years old. But it came like it was in the room.
Wow.
And it took my breath away and made my shoulders cold, and it made me feel like I told somebody this story, and I stood up and took a breath, and I got my dog, and I went out and laid in the grass, and I was like, I think I might be losing my mind. So I laid there, and I was like, well, if he was in there with me, I better respond. So I went back in and said, what'd you say? And he said, let me hear Get Down and Pray. So I hadn't played that song in a long time. And then the same voice said, I like that one a lot.
That's awesome.
And I just sat there and I was like, all right. And then nothing. I never had another moment like that. Now I had been living with a live microphone and earphones. Like, I'm sure in many different varieties I could explain that moment away with some rational thing. But to me, he was reminding me not to root myself in his story and his world.
Gotcha.
Charlie and I talked before we made this movie that we were about to spelunk down into some pretty dark places. And we both learned that it's a little bit easier to go down than it is to come out. And I know a lot of people that aren't with us anymore that were artists and warm, kind, generous human beings that got caught in an eddy that they never could come out of. And so I felt like he was looking out for me. It felt like somebody saying, I appreciate what you're doing, don't go too far.
Rein it back just a bit.
Yeah, remember that you're a songwriter and you got your things.
Yeah.
So I made a record. I didn't include that song, but I plan to record that song. And I plan to do it because he told me to.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, thank you so much.
Thank
Fantastic
you.
effort.
I appreciate you.